Do you want to steal shit? No. The fantasy of committing high-stakes crime is pretty much a standard video game topic nowadays, with stuff like the Grand Theft Auto series, Mafia, and Saints Row, plus some other examples I didn't mention, but there is one heisting simulator that's as famous as the Payday series. Do you have a fantasy of stealing money from the banks? Do you believe you're a modern-day Robin Hood? Or are you just saying that because you want to justify bringing an RPG 7 to an enclosed space full of civilians? Shut the hell up, Bay! Notoriety is a Roblox game based on the Payday series and is officially part of the Payday franchise. I am not joking, there was a licensing deal between Payday's official development studio and the Roblox group behind the games. Nowadays, Payday is pretty much a shadow of its former self due to the failure of Payday 3 as much as I enjoy the game, but back then, Payday 2 had a pretty substantial presence in the online consciousness, mostly occupying memes such as the infamous cloaker ringing sound, the bulldozer's voice lines, and most famously, Dallas's scream. But moving on, Notoriety is a game mostly built on Payday 2's mechanics, though there are also some new additions and major changes. Let's see how it holds up. Unless you're a very frequent Payday 2 player, at which point you'll be familiar with most of what I'm going to be saying, then Notoriety might be confusing for new players, which is pretty typical for Payday newcomers. By this, I mean by them immediately jumping into the hardest difficulty because the developers forgot to level lock the harder content again. But anyways, for those completely unfamiliar with Payday 2, or really the whole series, I will help explain Notoriety. It is essentially a criminal fantasy game where you run a heisting crew, either by yourself with AI teammates or with 3 other players, and rob various places across 2 countries, the United States and Canada, to become, as Dallas puts it, the tightest crew ever. Not until you're done with them. In here, you're given a selection of weapons, including melee, armor, and equipment that are, in the beginning, expensive. Several $100,000 for a gun and over $1 million for a saw is not something the average American can afford, let alone groceries, but as you progress in the game, it'll become significantly easier. You start with a pretty basic rifle and pistol, but as you progress and better your gameplay, you also familiarize yourself with a system and the other complexities that Notoriety has. Most of them are borrowed from Payday 2 though. So hopping into a contract mission, you're given a pretty specific list of objectives to do. Before you start, you're given the opportunity to prepare a stage called pre-planning, which was a system also from Payday 2, albeit not in the same super in-depth blueprint planning stuff and more the older, more simple buy this random favor type of assets. Sorry, no drawing penises on the billboard.
Who's been drawing dicks?
Keep in mind, heists are randomized at the start, so while you can replay heists, they will never be the same on each run. Objectives will stay the same, but police spawns, objective spawns, they'll always be different on each run. There are 4 difficulties: normal, hard, extreme, and nightmare. There's not much difference between them aside from how much cops deal damage to you, how much health they have, and how much of the stronger special units are exclusive to difficulties higher than hard. Basically, Payday 2's difficulty balancing. Hey, at least this game doesn't have Death Sentence 1 down. Now that you've prepared your gear and pre-planning, you're just about ready to do your first heist. Fingers crossed, I'm talking to a new player, or else I'll look really stupid here. Depending on the heist, you're given the option to approach it in 2 different ways. Firstly, you can approach the area in a quiet, clandestine manner that keeps the police from breathing down on your neck. This is called the stealth phase, which is incredibly time-consuming, if not difficult, requiring patience, focus, and a lot of planning beforehand. The randomness of starting or restarting a new heist will always make sure that you can't just simply redo the same plan over and over again, so make sure you don't screw up a good run. Stealth is measured by a detection meter, and all NPCs have their own detection meter, and if one of them notices you, there's a short timer between when you can silence them or else they'll sound the alarm. Remember, if you intend to be quiet, stay quiet! You get a nice stealth EXP bonus for completing the heist, so while it is incredibly frustrating, you at least get something nice out of it. Other than that, you can just go apeshit. Here, most NPCs will clear out and be replaced with extremely angry law enforcement looking to take you and the crew down. While it's pretty tame on lower difficulties, going loud on a harder setting, such as Nightmare mode, will also have the police send in more special units. This is something equally as important as the whole loud vs stealth gimmick, but some heists can only be exclusively played in either stealth or loud. Upon the completion of a heist, you're given your ill-gotten rewards in money and experience points, which goes to your leveling and progression. I do have the 2x multiplier game pass, so I'm getting away with more than I normally would. With the basics of heisting established, you have to make sure to distinguish between two important types of non-teammate NPCs. Firstly, there's the civilians. They're fucking useless. In stealth, they can detect you and will call the cops if they spot you, so you gotta take them hostage. In loud, you can exchange these hostages for a teammate who went into police custody, aka they died. If you accidentally kill one of them or multiple of them, you're going to lose a lot of money. Secondly, there are the guards and the police. I'm lumping them in together because there's not much of a difference. The stealth-oriented guards are basically civilians with guns who are kinda mushy and go down easily, but they do sound the alarm way faster than the civilians in stealth. Killing a guard will cost you a pager, which you have to answer before they sound the alarm, which is essentially your enemy kill limit, and it's 4 per heist. Some heist though offers a unique type of enemy that doesn't have pagers, so you're basically free to just, I don't know, commit a mass murder, I guess. Aside from that, the police are the loud-oriented enemies who come crashing in with special units. These special units are more dangerous than run-of-the-mill mall cops, and some of them also have special abilities, like the infamous Cloaker, which are called Spectres. Yeah, I don't know. They were renamed that from Cloakers in like 2023 or something. The same happened to Bulldozers. They got renamed to Juggernauts or something like that. Yeah. They also have some unique special units that were not in the original Payday 2 game, like the flamethrower guy. Skills are an important aspect of Notoriety. It's basically like Payday 2's still system. Skills are an important aspect of Notoriety. It's basically like Payday 2's skill system, if not with even more insane power creep for some reason. There's 4 trees: Mastermind, Enforcer, Technician, and Ghost. All 4 skill trees have unique gimmicks or stat buffs attached to them, so it's always a good idea to make an ideal build, be it stealth or loud. You can also opt for either a heavily armored style gameplay where you tank all the damage and deploy ammo bags, a light armored dodge build where bullets somehow phase through you, or in stealth, you go and make a guy who can just walk through an entire building with the most obviously criminal setup, complete with guns and obviously evil mask, and no one giving a shit. With most of the basic mechanics out of the way, progression is, again, like most of the stuff in Notoriety, another thing borrowed from Payday 2. Now, Payday 2 did undergo some pretty massive revamps to its infamy system, so it's way different nowadays compared to the one that Notoriety has. Anyways, imagine infamy as your typical prestige system. You have to gain a certain amount of money and reach level 100 before being able to prestige, while, depending on your choice, can be a free mask, a cash boost, EXP gain, or skill points. Personally, I went for the EXP boost first so I could get the other boost way faster. Do keep in mind that the cost of infamy can be decreased with a game pass, so if you're as lazy as I am, you can just get that game pass. The maximum infamy level is 250, so have fun. Oh yeah, I forgot there were game passes. This is pretty much something I got used to straight away, given that Notoriety is built on Payday 2 system, and Payday 2 has like, I don't know, a couple DLCs. Yeah, this game doesn't shy away from locking content behind a paywall as well. Unlike most examples, Notoriety's game passes aren't mandatory for progression and are entirely optional. Sure, it locks some weapons and a couple heists behind a paywall, but you can join a person hosting a lobby that has the locked heist for free, and most of the weapons are already available in the game outside of the microtransactions, and well, they're strong. Yeah, the OP weapons aren't locked behind game passes this time. I wonder what that fucking reminds me of. There are game passes that makes the progression easier, like the cheaper Infamy game pass, but then again, it's entirely optional and grinding in the game is already pretty easy. Anyways, I think for all that Notoriety has for its decade-long existence, including the game before its various updates and closure, for a game that started out as a really terrible Payday 2 ripoff to becoming a fully fledged licensed game endorsed by the very studio behind the original Payday games, I think Notoriety has a lot to say for itself. And it's mostly good things. So, the game has an amazing adaptation of Payday 2's many intricate systems, down from stealth to the dodge system and the very complex builds you can make out of the skill system. Almost everything about Notoriety makes it really worthy of it being part of the Payday brand, which it actually did, as I said way earlier in the video. The development team behind this game are very dedicated and consistent, unlike Payday 3, in delivering updates and in the future, likely way after this video goes online, character customization, once again based on Payday 2. That being said, it isn't isn't a perfect adaptation. And when I said amazing earlier, I also meant to say that Notoriety is extremely unbalanced. Every fucking time. Now, before I start detailing my review on the game, I'm just going to say that I struggle a lot in writing this bit. I procrastinated pretty hard writing this review since I wasn't actually sure what I want to say since I'm a Payday fan, but also the fact that I felt like I kept missing some key details because I had this predisposition that expected people to know how exactly Payday 2 works. Anyways, to start off with the good parts, there's already more content in Notoriety than Payday 3. Just kidding, that's a lie. Notoriety in its current state doesn't have a lot of content, but there's enough to satisfy everyone. There's just about enough things you can do on your first run, and with the infamy system, you can practically keep going on forever until you get bored, like in Payday 2. The skill system is definitely one of the more well done examples of skill progression in Roblox, even though it is borrowed directly from Payday 2 with some minor changes. It keeps you engaged, and most of the skills have a lot of great synergy with each other, so you're able to mix and match skills to guarantee the best outcome for either a loud or stealth run. There are skills that are completely fucking useless though, which was an issue that even affects the Payday series, and let's be real here, Notoriety skills are just not balanced, if at all. The skills are pretty insane, and I'm pretty sure that even the starter weapons can end up being even stronger than most other weapons. Come on, armor penetration, enemy piercing, and shield piercing? Oh yeah, I guess I'll be killing 10 enemies in one magazine. Some of the skills are useless, like I said earlier, like shouting at a teammate just to give him a speed boost. Yeah, that seems pretty pointless. If anything, this entire portion of the video is just me saying that skills are way unbalanced. That's about it on skills. But speaking about the weapons, I'm just gonna say this off the record, but all of these feel very copy-pasted. NFT guns, they don't feel unique at all, and it's probably one of the weakest areas of Notoriety. This is definitely an issue that plagued Payday 2, at least in my opinion. Very few of the weapons in that game actually felt good to use or had something unique going for it to make it feel different, aside from the cool animations and sounds, but at least the weapons were easily memorable, like Scarface's unique assault rifle, Sydney's signature weapon, jacket shit, and even the unique names that some of the weapons got, like Queen's Wrath. This also applies to the melee weapons, like Jiro's katana, which could cut cloakers in half. There's really nothing unique about Notoriety's weapons, aside from the funny designs or references to Payday 2's own jokes, like the comically large spoon, which was added while I was writing the script on April Fool's Day, or the Jade Fumo, the marketable plushie. The guns do all feel strong and punchy despite the weak sound design, and that's great, but the problem is that all the weapons feel too similar. They all deal very good damage except for the MK46, that gun fucking sucks. They have decent ammo pickup rates, and that's about it. There's nothing really noteworthy. Even the DLC weapons feel the same, aside from the China Lake, where there's so little difference between the statistics on the weapons, aside from maybe the generic weapon gimmicks that makes people go ooga booga, like the M1 Garand's ping, and in summary, they all feel like copy-pasted garbage, but at least it's garbage that can be used. I didn't touch on heist earlier since it would take too long if I tried to make an in-depth guide for every single heist in the game, but to summarize what I'm going to say, Notoriety's heists are extremely boring. A few of them are actually good, particularly the original ones that aren't based on the original Payday incarnation or inspired by it, but majority of them are just downright awful. Most of the heists are compensated heavily by how fun the game is. That's it. The depot is plenty of fun in stealth, and the Ozella heist is challenging once you get used to the stealth mechanics and figure out the oddities in the system. Then there's also stuff like Authority having the National Guard gimmick, and the adaptation of transport being decently fun for loud heists, and actually being a little bit more fun than how Payday 2 handled transport, but that's it for a good heist. Everything else falls flat on its face, or at least some of them aren't entirely terrible, but are just boring. Other heists like Gift Factory, which was inspired by Payday 2's Santa's Workshop, Trick or Treat, Haunted Forest, and Golden Mask Casino, inspired by the Golden Green Casino, are just not good. They're terrible. They're awful heists that don't deserve to be in Notoriety. God forbid this game has any good balance heists, because these four are probably the least fun heist in the entire game. They almost give Big Oil a run for its money for just how goddamn terrible they are. To be fair, you don't have to do some complex guesswork and puzzle solving just for Big Oil alone. Hell, even like the developers of Payday 3 and Payday 2 as well, because some of them moved to Payday 3, they don't like Big Oil. They fucking hated it.
If there's any truth in my new role as the interim game director, it's that I will make sure that the last heist we add is Big Oil. If even.
Going back to the Notoriety heists that I thought were terrible before I get distracted, they're terrible because for how loud-centric they are, the amount of enemy spam makes even Payday 2 blush. That being said though, Golden Mask Casino is getting a full revamp, so the absolute slander I just gave it is going to be outdated anyway, so yeah, that's nice. Also, Brick Bank, which is Big Bank, it sucks on stealth. You have no choice but to waste pagers, so if you want to go on a run where you don't kill any cops, bring the thing where you can take them hostage. Brick Bank is fucking shit. Why is it the only 2 heists that are paid that are shit in this game? Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating when I say that Brick Bank is one of the worst Notoriety heists. It's bad, but it isn't ungodly terrible like Trick or Treat and Haunted Forest. However, the reason I'm saying that is because of just how terrible this game is at balancing stealth and loud aspects. To get the most basic part out of the way, loud is just pure enemy spam, which I already said. Loud is okay, but it's not the most fun thing in the world compared to Payday 2 or even Payday 3's loud system. Payday 2's loud is a little better because yes, they spam enemies as well, but they don't all target you at once and you're given tons of breathing room for difficulties below death sentence. Notoriety though, you're getting fucked straight out of the gate. The moment the enemy sees you, you're screwed. You can't do much but pray that your armor is strong enough to save you and regenerate fast enough to not screw you over because they just start shooting. They don't care. If you have dodge, you gotta pray those dodge skills come into play. I didn't mention this often at all, but the leaning system that this game has can't save you either, since if you try to hide behind a pillar or wall, the enemy can't detect your fucking arms for some reason. And they shoot at it too! Usually they'd only shoot if they see your head, which is how detection works in Payday 2 and 3, but in Notoriety, once it hits loud, every part of your body is like free game. Yeah. I'm at a loss for words. Stealth is, honestly, it's a little better than loud. It's better in every regard than Payday 2, but less in the sense of the developers worked hard to balance this and more of, oh god, this is hilariously broken to the point I can abuse it. First off, the sole gadget designed to use as a distraction item doesn't work properly. The brick is useless, but hey, at least it's a cute plushie skin. Secondly, the detection meter is just so insanely slow compared to Payday 2 stealth detection, so you can just literally run past a guard and as long as the meter never fully fills, they just don't give a shit. Thirdly, guards don't have eyes in the back of their heads like in Payday 2, so you can just get within breathing distance like that one scene from that insane Baki manga. Just don't touch them because they still detect you instantly like in Payday 2 if you even so dare to lightly brush against them. Lastly though, the one thing I can say is unanimously good that I can't say that fucking word. Lastly though, the one thing that I can say is truly good and has basically little to no negative drawbacks is the fact that you can literally alternate between bagging a body and just carrying a corpse. Granted, you do have to drop your loot bags before you can carry a corpse away, but this feature makes hiding bodies so much more faster and less wasteful of body bags. Unfortunately though, enemies suck both in stealth and loud. Guards are just annoying in stealth, that's about it. You can't touch them or else they get mad and they sound the alarm way faster than civilians, but the last part is fine. They're just annoying to deal with in stealth, especially since in most heists, guards have a pager system that limits how many you can kill, with only the depot and a nightclub heist, not including the rush hour heist, which has a singular enemy that doesn't have a pager, having guards that don't have pagers. Aside from that, they're easy to deal with, they're just not convenient. Loud enemies though? Oh my fucking god. I don't even want to begin on how unbalanced the taser units are, or zappers, I don't care. I got used to them in Payday 3, but anyways, these electrocutioner cunts are just fucking unbalanced. Not even the cloakers, the flame troopers or firebugs, whatever you call them, the sniper units that use rocket launchers, or even the boulders that have akimbo lever action rebels like fucking Terminator is as annoying as these electric assholes since they can fucking stun you from across the fucking map. Okay, let's get back into the complaints as usual without getting too mad at the tasers. Anyways, the special units aren't that special. Don't take that the wrong way, please. They're sort of just there, I guess. They change so little of the gameplay that I feel like they're just a minor obstacle to overcome, like, uh-oh, one of those red bulldozers or the sentinels with the funky armor-plated helmets are coming. What are we gonna do? They have strong machine guns and can kill us in like half of this magazine. Oh right, you have notoriety skills. To summarize, the special units in Notoriety are shittier than the ones in Payday 2 and 3, or any of the Payday games really. That being said, however, they have really good designs. The bulldozers in particular look really good. There really isn't anything left for me to say or to add on. I'm not entirely sure what I could say about Infamy and level progression other than the fact that the lack of additional heist content makes the game feel way more repetitive than it should. Like, yeah, Payday 3's repetitiveness got really boring since there was a serious lack of replayability in the heist, and Payday 2's replayability is just way better, but then you go to play Notoriety and realize that it's basically the same problem, just that this game has slightly more heist options than Payday 3. But then again, looking back on everything I've said, why have I mentioned the Payday 3 so much? There has been a lot of comparisons between Notoriety and Payday 3, so how does the game hold up to each other and how does it compare? Is Notoriety better because of its stability, replayability, features, and accessibility by the Roblox platform? Or is Payday 3 better because it has a higher budget developed by professionals, kind of, and generally has many improvements over Payday 2's gameplay? Okay, truth to be told, I've been lying to all of you. This whole video was clickbait, kind of, but not in the way you expect. You see, depending on who you are, you might see either a thumbnail that calls either Payday 3 or Notoriety better. But the truth is, I'm using a feature available to YouTube creators that swaps out the thumbnail as a thumbnail test. The real answer to if either game is better than each other can be boiled down to one simple answer. You can't. That's it, you really can't, because technically Notoriety is just a bad version of Payday 2, and Payday 3 is considered to be not as good as Payday 2, so like, where does Notoriety go? Slightly above Payday 3 and below Payday 2 or below both games? Like, the more I try to come to a conclusion over this debate, quote-unquote, that I've given myself, the more confusing it got. Like, how exactly do I evaluate Notoriety? I just end up getting to the point where I say, oh, it's technically better than Payday 3 because it's Roblox Payday 2, but at the same time, Notoriety lacks a lot of the polish that's in Payday 2, then I start all over again. Let's be real here, Notoriety is just shitty Payday 2. It's not a great comparison to make against Payday 3, and I'm saying that as a person who spent more hours on Payday 2 than Payday 3 and still enjoyed both games. I don't really know why this comparison between Notoriety and Payday 3 exists, but if I had to theorize in an overly optimistic and probably unrealistic way, it's slightly because of how long each of the Payday games, yes, Notoriety is just a year longer than Payday 2 so it counts, have received support from the respective developers. I say that because that Payday 2 game we all know and love today has received over a decade's worth of support to reach the level of polish it did towards the end of its development cycle. If anything, from my own experience, I think Payday 2 reached its absolute best sometime after the Scarface DLC. While Payday 3 didn't deliver on its expectations at all, people look to Notoriety and Payday the Heist to an extent as what Payday 3 could have been, since that game didn't incorporate many of the features that are present in Payday 2. But that raises the question, why is Notoriety such a novelty in the eyes of some people? Yes, Notoriety is still under active development, but is it any better than 2? To me, it clearly isn't, as it misses a lot of the features and balancing that was in its original inspiration. What Notoriety really is, in my eyes, is a very faithful but flawed tribute from what was once a fan of a series all the way back in 2014, finally becoming part of the Payday brand that gets drawn into bad comparisons with a game that's different. Somewhat. It isn't anything malicious from Brickman or his team, but I believe it is the overdramatization made by communities of both Payday and Notoriety, mashing into what has essentially become a collective reaction to the dissatisfactory results of Payday 3's launch and the current state, not helped by the fact that Notoriety got shut down just before Payday 3 was released back in 2023. Notoriety is just diet Payday 2, so trying to make comparisons between the games just feels impossible to me, if not stupid in the end of the day, since it feels like it comes down to either bias born from nostalgia blindness, dissatisfaction towards Payday 3, or just plain simple trend hopping. That's not to say Payday 3 isn't undeserving of its criticism. There's a lot of things that I have to complain for Payday 3, and there is a lot that game did wrong, and even the developers have acknowledged that. But let's not pretend Notoriety is technically better on the basis that it's Payday 2 but Robloxified, when even the starting weapons in the game can kill the 10 cops with a single magazine because you equip the skills that let you pierce through enemies and body armor, and also the lack of a lot of polish that exists in Payday 2 at that. Notoriety can't even scratch the surface of exciting heists compared to both games. The only contender I can really think is good enough to be better than a Payday 2 or Payday 3 heist would probably be Authority, because it's technically the first ever Payday game to have the National Guard fully involved in fighting against the Payday gang. Notoriety is not a bad game, let me reiterate that. It's a good game actually, one that I highly recommend. But if you want to have an ideal Payday experience, just play the original series. Payday the Heist, Payday 2, or even Payday 3. I don't care, I like 2 and 3. Probably 3 a bit more given that the latter has so much more quality of life improvements over Payday 2. But a lot of people prefer Payday 2 because it has so much more content than Payday 3 and polish for that matter. Notoriety is a great starting point, but if you just want to play a good Payday game or the ideal Payday game, play either of those games. Ultimately, in my eyes, the comparisons between Payday 3 and Notoriety is just stupid. That's that. I would say if I were to put a final conclusion, like my absolute final judgment in where I would rank Notoriety in all of the Payday games, I would say that Raid World War II is the greatest Payday spin-off ever made. Fuck yeah! Just kidding. Notoriety would probably go just slightly above Payday 3 and Payday 2 at the top. Like, Payday 2 is S tier, Payday 3 is maybe A- or B tier, even though I really like that game. Notoriety would probably be around B or B plus B or B minus. I don't. Yeah, you see, I don't know. Also, Raid World War II is F tier because I fucking hate that game. Notoriety is a former Payday fan game made by dedicated fans of the series that was eventually licensed and officially part of the Payday franchise, technically making an official spin-off of the Payday series available for all on the Roblox platform. The game is entirely based on the systems present in Payday 2 with some changes in the mechanics, progression, gameplay, and quality of life features. The thing is, Notoriety is a good game. I highly recommend playing it. However, it's still deeply flawed and, in my opinion, worse than both Payday 2 and 3, if only by a small margin. It's not a bad game by any means, but if you want to actually experience a true Payday game, just buy either Payday the Heist 2 or 3. I find the comparison between Notoriety and Payday 3 just difficult to justify. Maybe it's a lack of content in the fact that Notoriety gets more transparency than Payday 3 currently has, or maybe it's just the fact that I'm so biased towards the original Payday 2 and 3 games that it makes me blinded in a very ironic and hypocritical sense, but ultimately, I feel as if it's silly, if not also impossible, to compare these games. Notoriety is good enough to be considered its own game, even if it was built on Payday 2, but it shouldn't be elevated on the same level just to make comparisons since it lacks a lot from what Payday 2 has, in addition to the fact that the game is entirely built on whatever engine ROBLOX runs on, which is notorious, no pun intended, for having some terrible physics and latency issues. Ultimately, Notoriety is a great starting point for new fans who want to see what Payday has to offer, but like I keep saying, if you want to try out a true Payday experience, just get any of the official Payday games on Steam.
ground and stand your toes.
Everybody listen up. This is a ROBLOX